Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today I have a very exciting in-depth deck tech about Yoda GreenForce. And this is going to be a really exciting video because I am joined by Tim, also known as T85Challenge, from Germany and from Team Enigma. Hi Tim, how's it going?
Hello guys, I'm doing pretty alright. I'm still a little bit sick, but everything else is perfect.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be great to have additional insight coming from you since you've won a PQ with this deck. And we're going to give you absolutely all the information we know about this deck, and hopefully you can play the deck for yourself and see if you like it. This video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. And this is the list that that Tim won the PQ Vinchlem. I have no idea how to pronounce this. Um,
It's Philsheim in German.
Vis Vilsam, okay.
Philsheim.
Vilsam. And this is the list he won the event against. Yeah, this is pretty awesome mid-range Yoda. So Yoda has been the best 7 deploy leader in the game. And now that the meta is a little bit different, there's a bit more opportunities to try different things. And I think this is one of those very powerful, like kind of late game focused mid-range deck that do really well into the current mid-range meta. And now that the mid-range decks are already a bit worse because of the ban of Thorrk, there's more opportunities for those kind of like, it's not quite a control deck, but it is really on the frontier between control. It has a lot of ramp. There's a lot of great innovation in this deck. A lot of very new things we've never seen before that really do make the deck really special in my opinion. And we're going to be detailing all of this in this video. Tim, can you let us know a little bit more how you came to play this deck for the PQ?
It was basically a little bit random. Like I had a deck crisis again, which I had in the time about Vegas and after it as well. And I didn't know what to play after I won a PQ with Anakin the weekend before. And the Force was banned, so Anakin Blue Force was still a good deck, but it didn't felt like good enough for me. So I was trying with friends, some decks, and then like one friend told me very exciting, he met a guy on Petronaki who played a Yoda and cloned it and completely destroyed him. And of course, he's the kind of guy who talks then to the guy and got the list from him and like that kind of stuff. Then he sent the list over to me. I tested the deck and was very surprised by it, how strong the deck felt, and what cool things it could do. Then I sent the list to Better, and we tested also a bit with the deck. Then we decided to change some little things about the list, and then I took it to the BQ and won it with the deck. That's
Awesome.
basically the story behind it.
Awesome. So it was originally a list that came with your friends. Then you did playtest with some teammates, Beton,
Yeah,
and after the PQ, we also playtested the list as well this week, and we've also made some improvement to the list. Notably, some try to fix some of the bad matchups, and this is what we came up with. So this, what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be focusing on the updated version of the deck. So if you want to dial up and bring the deck to the next level, this is really the perfect video as we're going to be talking about all the major changes in the deck. So something I understood very early on Star Wars Unlimited when I started first playing Star Wars Unlimited is that ramp is really powerful. And I know this is old news, but it feels like not many decks really utilize the ramp so much in this game in the way I really was using it very early on when I was playing Vader Green back in the days. Of course, I was the best 7 deploy leaders in the game back then. And really what is very powerful when you ramp with that kind of leader is that not only, of course, does it allow you to get access to more powerful cards, it also allows you to get your leader deploy earlier. And since Yoda is one of the best leader deploy in the game, it is just such a very powerful impact. But one of the big difference is that so far the ramp decks are mostly being focused on villainy, but this time we have a real ramp deck for heroism where Tim is really utilizing all the ramp available in this color combination, even though it is less efficient. But it turns out that if you do this, you can really end up with a very powerful deck that most of the other Yoda deck you would see normally will only play like the resupply, and sometimes they will play Spark of Hope, but they will definitely not play the resupply carrier, and they often wouldn't play the Spark of Hope. We're really playing the full package to really take and try to bring this deck and bring the Yoda deploy. We remember in the final of the PQ, you had Yoda being deployed basically 2 turns, like at the same time as your opponent was deploying their Anakin, or sometimes 1 turn before the Anakin was deployed. That was absolutely insane, and it puts you very far ahead when you do this. So obviously Yoda does have. So one of the other characteristic of this deck is that he's not running the Data Vault, which most Yoda Greens have been mostly focused on Data Vault. We're running the 20 HP base, which is counterintuitive. We'll talk a little bit more in details later on why we're making that choice. But as you can see, we have plenty of ways to counterbalance, and the deck is very carefully built in order to be able to interact with aggro at all stages of the game and have the ability to heal. So then the 20 HP base is not too big of an hindrance. And there's also some ways, of course, to combine Yoda's ability, of course, with still playing the You My Only Hope, Yoda's combination in order to cheat very large units into play, and all that good stuff. As you can see, so most of the changes we've made to the list are mostly changes we've done in order to improve the bad matchups that mostly were, I would say, the aggressive deck, the pilot space decks, and that type of decks. Tim, can you tell us a little bit more about some of the changes that we've made to the list and the reason we've made them, without going too much in details, because we're going to go into the card by card analysis later on.
So basically, we found that the deck loses a lot of games to the Chewbacca Falcon combo. So we started to find a good solution for it, and we came to the Traitors. Basically, we swapped the Yoda's lightsaber out for it, because the card is basically only a win more card, and we don't need it that much. The Traitors felt just better to fix this kind of matchup. And then there were the other kind of space aggro decks like Vader Yellow or Kazuda or even Han 4. And there we had already the Ego Escort Fighter and the Daughter, but it was not enough, so we also added the Marauder to have more options to kill like Millennium Falcons or Victor Leaders and stuff like that. And also you can ramp into the Marauder, or you can play it with You Are My Only Hope on turn 2, which can be super strong
Yeah,
to fix those kind of matchups.
I think 5, also like Traitorous was combining really, really well with You're My Only Hope, as it's a 5 cost card. And it's also, you can go ramp on turn 2 directly into Traitorous as well, which is really great. Also, another weakness we found with the deck is like the deck was struggling against very heavy control decks. So this was a very easy thing to fix. We just added more on 1 in the, so 1 more on 1 in the main, 1 more Cullen back in the main, and some salvage in the sideboard to get, which are essentially just extra copies of on 1, and the third copy of Calaran back in the sideboard, so the deck is just considerably better against control than the previous version. Okay, so now we're gonna get into probably a big question a lot of people are wondering is what are the advantages of running the GreenForce base over the Data Vault? So what I've identified, the major advantages, first is the higher chances to draw the key card, notably the ramp. So really, it's one of the big theme of this deck compared to the traditional Data Vault Yoda deck that only plays the 3 copies of resupply, is really to make ramp much more consistent. That's why we play the full package of ramp, but also, of course, playing a 50 card deck is also going to make this more consistent as well. So all of our key cards, including the ramp, higher chance to get them. The second big argument is that we do start a game with minus 5 HP, which is very significant, but we make up for this by having access to really powerful heal card. There's, of course, the Itinerant Warrior, the Chirrut, which is the best Sentinels in the game, probably, if you can play Force. And, of course, the Yoda in late game that also heals you up as well. And then finally, having access to Yoda unit, which, as you probably... We're going to talk a bit more about this, but the Yoda unit has really been the crux of what makes the deck so powerful in the late game. Notably the Yoda into clone combo, which we'll talk a bit more later. It has obviously a very big reason to run the GreenForce as well. So now that we went into like the different elements, we're going to go into the different cards. So starting off with the leader. So Yoda Yoda's ability is relatively weak because it doesn't have any impact on the game, but It also makes the deck more consistent, also allows us to find ramp more easily. We play a deck where in the early stage of the game, we have a lot of ways to sacrifice our 2-drops. Our 2-drops are not so... we don't play 2/2 shielded, we don't play that many 2/4s, we play mostly like 3/3s and stuff like, which are easy to trade in. So we can actually use the ability quite early on, activate your money up quite early on. So we can really utilize this ability. Of course, this gives us more chance to hit our key cards. But the big deal in Yoda, and the reason we play Yoda, is simply because it has one of the best leader deployment, at least on the heroism side. He has one of the most powerful leader deployments. Comes to play, deal with something of almost any size, as we are often able to put like an expensive card on top of the deck, discard it, and then remove it from the board, and then we get himself a 4/9, which is very, very difficult to kill, and got a restore to, which gives us the late game inevitability. And the fact that this can appear, the Yoda deploy can appear at the same time as Luke Skywalker, really allows you to completely take over the game in a way that you can't do with any other leader in heroisms right now. Okay, so Tim, if there's anything you want to add, just feel free to talk. If you don't say anything, I'm just going to move on to the next card.
Yeah, like also in the late game, the ability helps a lot with the 8 pieces of ramps. We don't get punished for it because we can just put it on the bottom of the deck in late game. And other decks, like it's basically dead cards for other decks. But for this decks, you basically cycle through it with Yoda, which is a big deal as well.
Yeah, great. It really filters you when you start running out of cards. So in the deck, we play 2 copies of Battlefield Marine, which is a card that might be surprising to see in a deck that plays the Force. Normally, Force decks want to get the Force early on in the game in order to enable their powerful Force payoffs. But in this case, we actually don't need the Force very early on in the game. We actually don't really play that many Force payoffs, and even Shiroots and Eternal Warriors are cards that are relatively good even without the Force. So in the early stage of the games, our priority is 1, interact with the opponent, get rid of their 2-drops, and stay alive. And priority number 2 is to have ways to enable Spark of Hope, and enable also You're My Only Hope as well. So those kind of cards are really important to enable early on to get a very explosive starts, which allows us to get ourselves really well in the early stage of the game. And obviously this is kind of a greedy deck, so it's a deck that if you have a good early game, you're going to win the game most likely. So Battlefield Marine will trade with the opponent units, while for example a card like Secretive Sage, for example, with only 2 attacks is not really able to interact with much. It's a great card to get the Force, but it's not good at stabilizing the game early on. So moving on to the next card is Lothwolf. Basically the exact same idea as Battlefield Marine. We play 2 copies of it as well. It's a bit more specialized, but it's better against aggro because it has Sentinel, but it cannot attack. So it's more specialized anti-aggro, but it does pretty much the same job. It dies early on to trigger Spark of Hope and You're My Only Hope and that kind of thing.
I think they also have kind of different roles because Battlefield Marine, you always want to play Battlefield Marine if you have the initiative, because you then can trade in by yourself into some units, like Sabine unit or kind of that. But if you don't have the initiative, you always want to have Lothwolf that the aggro player can't go just in base and deals more damage to you. So that's a bit different between both cards. They are different in if you have initiative or not, but otherwise they are the same.
Great point. Moving on, same ID but in space. Phoenix Squadron A-Wing will allow you to kill most of the 2-drop in space, or no, almost all of the 2-drops in space early on in the game, and die, which will trigger Spark of Hope and You're My Only. So play 3 copies of Phoenix Squadron A-Wing for basically interacting in space. Next we got Yaddle. Yaddle is a way for us to get the Force and the Force token early, which sometimes can be important. And it has Restore 1, which obviously is great. We play a lot of Jedi in the deck, so the ability is also quite relevant, and just a very solid card in general. Moving on, we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Obi-Wan, I think we played 2 of them, and it's just a really solid card. It's another layer of defense. It's also a way for us to get the Force. So on turn 2, all 3 drops, it's more important for all 3 drops to get the Force, because then we get the Force for Eternal Warrior and for Shirut. Once again, if we don't actually gain the force at that stage, it's not the end of the world, but it's better. So at this stage, I think if your 2-drop doesn't have the force, then it's nice that your 3-drop has the force, and vice versa. If your 2-drop has the force, then you can afford to play a 3-drop that doesn't have the force. So Obi-Wan Kenobi is just a great stat unit, really great card to bring back from Obi-Wan, or to get from Keller and back. Good line of defense, and it's gonna give us the force. Next, a bit more defensive, doesn't give us the force, but Village Protector is still a great card. One of the weaknesses of Obi-Wan Kenobi is like he will lose Sentinels. Sometimes you need to have a card that always has Sentinels, and the fact that his shield is very important as well. Another fantastic card to get from Obi-Wan and from Kellan Beck. Once again, the main idea is to stay alive as much as possible. Sentinels are just also great because they're a unit that will die, allows us to activate our Spark of Hope and our You're My Only Hope. Moving on to Shirut. Obviously, we're going to be playing the Force, so we need Sentinels. Shirut is an auto-include in any defensive Blue Force deck. And we played 2 of them. And Tim, can you let me know a little bit more why we're not playing the full package, the full 3 copies of Shirut in this deck?
I had before in my old list, I had 1 in Sideboard. For the matchups, we need a lot of Ground Sentinels. But I don't play the full copy of it basically because we are ramp deck and we most of the times want to skip the 4 resource turn. And in late game, there are just 2 enough, I think, because like you have ways to get with current back, to find it in the deck if you need it in a very important spot. And he's basically not that important as a force payoff, because if you, for the Yoda unit, the Eternal Warrior is just better, because then you can use the force by yourself and just deal the damage immediately. And with Shield, the opponent has to attack into you that you can trigger the Yoda effect. So that's why we play only 2 of them.
Yeah, we're talking about the Yoda unit. And just generally speaking, Shirut, as strong as Shirut is, it's still a card that basically is only good against ground-based aggro / mid-range decks. Like, it's useless against space aggro, and it's kind of useless against control, so it is a kind of a specialized card at the end of the day. So talking about Eternal Warrior, not as spectacular against aggro as Shirut is, but a lot more flexible, can work in a wider variety of matchups. As you were pointing out very, very well, is it works better with the Yoda unit, as it allows us to give us another way to use the Force and use the ability of Yoda. And just a really solid unit in general. Even if you don't get the when played, just a 4/4 shield is actually pretty solid. But we played 2 of them, once again, for the reason that Tim says. Otherwise, we just have too many 4-drops, and since the entire idea of the deck is to go directly into 5, that just would be awkward for the curve. And talking about 5-drops, we got Blue Leader, which obviously can be played on turn 2, and it's really great against space aggro decks. But obviously, it's also often going to be also a 5-drops. This deck has the ability to skip turn 2 and play 5-drops on turn 3. So it's just a really solid card. And Blue Leader is kind of like, this is one of the most powerful cards in the game. To be fair, it's very flexible, very powerful. It keeps us alive. It does everything a green-white deck would want.
And it's so strong with resupply. So strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Also can be brought back in play with Karen Beck and another card that we not used to see often, but I think that Resupply Carrier can be a really strong option, especially if you're playing a 7 deploy leader. Obviously, Yoda as one of the most powerful leader deployment in the game. The fact that this card comes literally the turn before Yoda is supposed to be deployed and allows you to deploy Yoda systematically 1 turn earlier is really powerful, especially since Yoda is great at stabilizing the game. Being able to deploy Yoda 1 turn earlier, kill a unit, get 1 extra turn of restore can be the difference between life and death. And that also means that your Yoda unit is also going to come earlier. Your Om1 is going to come earlier. Even in control matchups, having a lot of extra resources so we can actually make Om1 more powerful, because Om1 is a card that scales as you get more resources. There's a big difference between an Om1 play on 12 or an Om1 play on 8. So even in very late game situation where you are way past the 8 resource, Resupply Carrier still has value to the deck, and also gives you a little bit of space presence, which otherwise the decks really lack. Moving on to a bit of a more of a strange card, and this card is definitely kind of a combo card. Obviously, Clone can be used to copy any non-vehicle unit, including the one of your opponents, but the main objective of Clone in this deck is to copy the Yoda unit, which is right there. It also works, obviously, you can copy Killer Beck and Luke as well, but more often than not, the idea is to copy the Yoda, and the combo is pretty much, so you got a Yoda in play, you have the Force, you play Clone, you copy Yoda, you're going to be able to heal 5 from the new one, and then you're going to be able to trigger both abilities, the deal damage of the first Yoda and the deal damage of the second Yoda. So let's say relatively realistic scenario, you got a Yoda plus a random unit, you play the Clone, you're going to be healing 5 from your base, and then you're going to be dealing twice 6 damage to 2 different units, which is completely insane. So it's a very, very powerful card when you can set that up, but unfortunately, of course, it does require you to have a Yoda, so it is a little bit win more, but sometimes those kind of cards are what you need to really break through and win the value game. And of course, the fact that you can copy other really powerful cards makes it quite flexible. So it's a little bit clunky, but when it works, it's insanely powerful. And so yeah, we're playing one copy of the deck, one copy of Clone in the deck.
If it works, it's basically an auto win against any deck that doesn't play SLB.
Really true.
Because it turns the match so much around, it's so strong. Because you clear mostly 2 units, heal another 5, no deck can recover from that.
Yeah, definitely. Moving on to Killer Beck, so we got 2 copies of Killer Beck. Used to only be playing 1, we went up to 2, plus a third one in the sideboard, just because this card is amazing against control. It's also really powerful against midrange. The 7/7 stat line is basically kills Luke without dying, which is just so important. It's also a card that scales, just like Ohm1, it doesn't allow you to play a card that costs 3 or less. It actually reduces the card that you're playing by 3 less, which means that this card grows stronger and stronger as the game goes on. So if you're playing it for 8, let's say, you can actually bring back an Interior Warrior or Chirrut. So it scales in the late game. It has amazing stats. It has an immediate impact on the game. It's too slow against aggro, but even against aggro, it's not useless because it can fetch you like a Sentinel units, and then it can put a very fast clock on your opponent as well. So it's just a really, really great card. So we played 2 of them, and we played a third one in the sideboard. Moving on to the Luke Skywalker, I don't think I need to give more explanation on why we're playing this card. It's obviously the best blue-white card in the game, and it's arguably one of the best legendary in the game. Yeah, I don't think I need to explain why this card is in the deck. It's just amazing. And it curves perfectly well with the Yoda deploy as well. Then we got Yoda. So Yoda is really the big difference maker between the Force version and the non-Force version. So we don't really have ways to abuse his ability the same way an Obi-Wan deck can. But it turns out after testing that it's not required. Yoda is simply just really, really powerful. Even if you don't manage to spend the Force later on, it's still the heal 5 deal killer unit and leave a 5/9 on the board behind is just by itself just extremely nasty. Tim, can you tell us a bit more about this card and how it performed for you in the PQ?
It was by far the best card in the deck. It's so much better than Luke Skywalker, and Luke Skywalker's, you all guys know how broken Luke Skywalker is. It's such an insane card. Like, basically, in almost every second matchup, my favorite combo of cards is basically on 6 resources. You play the resupply carrier, because that lets you immediately go to 7 and give you the option to flip Yoda leader immediately, which you want to do almost every time you have that. And you flip the leader, kill something else, then you can attack, get a Force, kill maybe even another unit. And the Yoda leader is so sticky that it will stay alive, and it's never worth it for the opponent to kill the resupply carrier. So you will always shoot 6 damage basically with the Yoda unit, sometimes even 8, which is amazing. Heal 5, and then you basically on claim them after you attack with Yoda leader, and you basically play it at first action before you attack with Yoda unit, because then you can immediately get the force back, and your opponent has to kill the Yoda unit because the threat that you have something to trigger the force is too big for him. And that's like so powerful, this combination of cards. That's why the Yoda and the Resupply Carrier are, in my opinion, the two best cards in the deck because of the combo. I skipped most of the time even the 7 resource turns. So Luke Skywalker is broken. If you have the Luke into Yoda, it's also super strong. But this is even better, so
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think one of the things that is often overlooked about the combination between the Yoda leader and the Yoda unit that you were pointing out is it's almost you're almost always gonna have your Yoda leader in play by the time Yoda comes to play. So it gives you like a very sticky unit that does make the ability more powerful because you're more likely to have a wide board by the time Yoda comes out because they curve into each other so well.
Yeah, definitely.
Moving on, we got the Ohm 1, which is obviously the other late game powerhouse of the deck. We used to only play 2, now we went up to 3, once again in the idea of making the deck better against control. As powerful as Yoda is mostly an anti-midrange slash anti-control card. Anti-aggro card, sorry. Anti-midrange, but it doesn't do that much against control. As opposed to Ohm 1, which gives us this recursive gives us 2 units. It's kind of like a big version of Scare and Bag, basically. So, a really powerful card. I don't think I need to say more about it. It's just, it's been a standard of all green-white decks since set 1.
And you basically get super easy to 12 resources with the deck because you have like you ramp so fast into 8, and after that, like the You Are My Only Hopes, the resupplies, and the Sparkle Hopes, you don't need them anymore, so you put them just in resources. And 12 and 13 resources are the key points for the deck because with 12 resources, you can play Home 1 into Caloran back and put 3 units on the board, which basically demands a Super Laser Blast for control decks, but they don't have 5 Super Laser Blasts, so they will run out of it. And in 14 resources, you can even make plays like play home 1 into Yoda unit or something like that. And for the Karen back, can also play him with for 12 to bring back a home 1 and stuff like that, which is super powerful.
Yeah, it basically gives us the late game inevitability, and the fact that it scales is become better and better as the game progresses is nasty.
Yeah.
So moving on to a card that I think is really at its best in this deck is the Spark of Hope. We're playing those 3/3 for 2s or the 3/2 for 2s with the Phoenix Squadron A-Wing in order to enable us to maximize the chances of us being able to get a Spark of Hope. Something I've observed while I was watching you playing the game is like you like keeping this card very late in your hand, as opposed to because in this deck it's like Spark of Hope is pretty bad if you are playing like a 6 deploy or 5 deploy leader, because if you can't get it to trigger on turn 2, the card is basically useless. But because you have a leader that deploys so late, you get way more opportunities to use Spark of Hope to great effect, because now you can totally play this card on turn 2, on turn 3, on turn 4, or even on turn 5, and it's still going to be really strong. So Spark of Hope is really much better in a deck where you get a very late deploy leader than in other RAM decks, because you get so much more opportunities to use it. And that's why you can keep it in your hand much later, and the fact that it costs 2 becomes very relevant then.
There are even games where you can go on 5 resources with Spark of Hope and resupply and immediately flip the Yoda leader, which is super strong.
Absolutely.
Which no other deck basically can do.
Okay, so we got of course the resupply, with still the most unconditional and powerful ramp in the game. You're My Only Hope, which is an auto-include in any Yoda deck. You're My Only Hope basically compensates one of the major weaknesses of the deck, is like it can be really slow in the early stage of the game. You're My Only Hope will allow you to cheat into play like a Luke faster, a Yoda faster, even a resupply carrier, like those kind of cards. And sometimes even you can even cheat into play cards that are not units. It's a very flexible card, so you can cheat into play like a Traitorous or Vanquish to stabilize the game. So it just is an auto include in any Yoda deck. Because of course the combo is that you have a unit that gets defeated, you use Yoda, you draw cards, you put the card that you want to play from your money from the top of the deck, and then you play your money. Just in case you didn't know about the interaction. Moving on, we got Vanquish, and this is also probably going to surprise a lot of people. Why are we not playing Fel the Dragon or Shadow Point? Why are we playing this outdated card? Well, Shadow Point is great, but the problem is like it uses the Force, which, as you know, this deck is not so good at getting the Force. It is able to get the Force consistently whenever we need it, which is mostly for Yoda, but it's not a deck that is really built to gain the Force constantly throughout the game, which can make Shadow Points very inconsistent. And the reason why we don't mind, so Fel the Dragon is also great, but right now there's a lot of cards in the meta that do play around it because everybody knows about this card, so a lot of people kind of play around it. And in this very specific deck, we don't actually care too much about paying the extra resource because, once again, the idea is to ramp on turn 2 to get into 5. So in this case, really we don't care too much about paying the extra 1. And also, if you play this card from You My Only Hope, then the You My Only Hope gives you a 5 resource cost reduction. So might as well just use all those 5 and get the more flexible Vanquish over the Fel the Dragon. Do you got any other reasons why we're playing Vanquish over those 2 cards?
Basically, Vanquish is better into aggro, and aggro is the more harder matchup than midrange. Like against midrange, the Fel is better because it's cheaper, and you basically don't need to kill units that have lower than 5 HP. But against aggro, it's super important for, especially against base decks that you can Falcons. It's super important, or even like Victor Leader, you don't have sometimes the answer from the sideboard, so you need it.
That's a very good point as well. Well, just the flexibility of the card is well worth the 1 extra resource, at least in this deck. Moving on, we got 2 copies of Rival's Fall. So Rival's Fall is like another piece of removal. Pilot leaders are quite popular right now, notably Boba 4. Expensive leaders are also quite popular. So Rival's Falls answers those. Is there any other specific meta reason why we're playing 2 copies of Rival's Fall?
I think the biggest reason is because the Yoda leader deals with the problematic units, so we sometimes have a bigger problem to deal with leaders, and that card helps a lot. And you can even play it against aggro pilot decks like Hunt 4. I played it with You Are My Only Hope on 4 resources and just killed the Hunt 4 when he flipped and won the game by doing that.
Yeah. Like we have a lot of ways to kill non-leader units, so having a way to kill leaders is just great. Moving on, we got Traitorous, which is one of the newest edition of the deck. So we already talked about this card earlier. It gives us, it's great because the 5 cost is great because we ramp on turn 2, play Traitorous on turn 3. Not only, of course, are we dealing with an opponent unit, we're also gaining an additional unit as well. It is susceptible to discard to upgrade removal, but that's why we play it in main deck. And then we are going to be siding out this card after sideboard if we expect our opponents to be adding in some confiscate and stuff. The thing is, like, this is pretty much the only upgrades we're playing, so if our opponent adds up confiscates after sideboard, those confiscates are going to be dead for the most part. And another cool thing as well is that usually people don't expect, like Traitorous is a card that can really take people by surprise as well. It's a card that also gives us answers to Chewbacca, as we were saying earlier, which is a big major issue for the deck. Turn 2 Chewbacca is just pilot is just a big problem for the deck, so Traitorous answer this. It's great against space aggro, which is a natural weakness of the deck as well. And it's also great, I mean...
And also, like, force units into Lightsaber can also be a problem if you don't have to Vanquish. But you have an additional answer because they can completely destroy your complete ground presence in the early stage, and it's hard to recover from that.
Another play you can make as well, which I think is quite good, is against black-green villain. You can still Super Laser Technician sometimes, and that basically wins you the game because you're denying the opponent a ramp, and you're getting a ramp for yourself, which is so powerful in his deck. So the good old Traitorous into...
And if you have the initiative, you just play Resupply, and then have to play their superization and you just are on 5 when they can't use an action to defeat it.
Yeah. I mean, a player who knows about the list will probably not play like that, but realistically speaking, it's just another card you have to play around then. So it's just a really good card. Now we get into the sideboard. So first of all, we got Salvage. So Salvage pretty much his only purpose is to reanimate Om1. Om1 is one of the most powerful cards against control decks, hard controls and stuff like this. So being able to reanimate the most powerful cards in our deck is very, very powerful. It does have -1. It does deal 1 damage, but honestly, that's pretty irrelevant. So we're playing 2 copies of Salvage just to improve the control matchup, which has been a weakness of the deck historically. But with this, it really fixes the matchup quite well. Moving on to Eager Escort Fighter, we play 3 copies of those, and those are for the space aggro matchups. It will one-shot enemy falcons, all the key cards, also what's it called, the Victor Leader, that kind of thing. So it has been a standard, and also we can combine it with, if we're on 5, we can combine it with Spark of Hope to ramp as well, which is nice. Any other thoughts on the Eager Escort Fighter?
No, I think you said everything about it.
Next, we got 2 copies of the Daughter. The Daughter is a great answers to once again space aggro decks. Whenever you're playing a false decks, because the idea is you got a couple of we get into a racing situation where you get a bunch of force units on the ground. Your opponent has a bunch of space units, and what's going to happen then is that you're going to be attacking with the force. Every force unit you have, and every time you can get a force, you can basically heal your base for 2, which really completely changes the dynamic of the racing game. And obviously, if you can ever get to combine this with Yoda, then it becomes completely insane, because then Yoda gets to kill a unit every time that happens. Obviously, if you get to that point, you've already won the game anyway, but it's kind of a lot of fun. But yeah, it's just a great card against space aggro, and once again, 5 is a great cost because you can play it on turn 3 if you ramped, and you can also play it off You're My Only Hope as well. Moving on to the Marauder. Marauder has been also a newest addition. It's another ambush unit that will help us against space aggro. Once again, 5 cost is really nice in the curve, and this deals with most of the space unit we are worried about. A 3rd copy of Killer Back for the control matchups, and that's basically it. So, going back into the slides, I just wanted to let you know that on Card Market you can pick up Yoda for less than €8 on Card Market, so a great legendary that you should definitely pick up if you are looking. And it's also a card that I believe is going to get better after rotation as well, when the competition for a late game card is going to be a little bit less fierce. Moving on now, we're going to talk about other considerations, other card that you might wonder why it's not in the deck, and we're going to basically explain why. First one is Concord Dawn Interceptor. Can you let us explain us, even though Space Aggro is a bad matchup for us, why would you not want to play those great Space Sentinels to improve the Space Aggro matchup?
Because against Vader, it's basically if they capture it, we have a big problem. It's like too big of a swing for them because we did basically nothing, and they can build their board more. And even against other decks, like in this time with the pilots and stuff, it's basically before the pilot decks were out, they always needed to attack twice into the Concordon to kill it. And now it's basically one swing and it's dead, and there's a lot of bounce effects in those aggro decks, so it's not that important anymore. And because we can't attack with it to kill something, it's just a dead card in my opinion.
Okay. Then a lot of people will be surprised to not see Yoda. We play the Yoda Legendary, the Yoda Leader, but we're missing the uncommon one, the one that actually sees the most play. So why are we not playing Yoda? He's great. He gives us the force. He's restoring us, which is great to keep us alive, and it's also good against control because he draws us a card. So why not Yoda?
Like basically I'm between Yoda and Obi-Wan. We can choose between those. But because of the free attack and the 5 life from Obi-Wan, he's if we play turn 2 as a sentinel, the aggro decks can't deal with him, and they die if they attack into him. And the Obi-Wan can also trade better into units, which allows us again to use You Are My Only Hope and stuff like that better. So it's just a better card. And we basically don't need the extra draw in the deck now because Force Row and cards like the discard strategies are gone. So I don't think the extra card does give us a lot.
Okay. How about Security Sage? This has been an absolute standard of every single Force deck so far. A great way to gain the Force, and also a card that is difficult to deal with. Why is it not in the deck?
It's the same reason with Gange, he will also appear. Like, because of the shield, he is protected from dying, and he has only 2 attacks, so he won't die, and he will rarely rare kill something. So we have no way to use Spark of Hope and You Are My Only Hope on turn 2, which is a big deal, and Battlefield Marine and Low Wolf are just better in those slots.
Great point. Same question. I guess it's the same question in the exact same answer for Gungi. We want our 2-drops to die. We want our 2-drops to have an impact on the board and be able to trade with the opponents. We don't want our 2-drops to stay alive, basically. This is not our priority. So exact same. I guess it's the exact same answer for Gungi as well. Moving on is U-Wing Reinforcement, which has been an absolute standard of every single green-white deck so far. So why is U-Wing not part of the deck?
It's basically like the problem with U-Wing is we don't have enough cards beneath 7 which brings us a lot of value to the board. If you play like 2 2-drops and 1 3-drop, it's basically too weak in the late game. And just a Luke or Karen back brings much more to the board. So I don't like the inclusion of U-Wing Reinforcement. And because the important cards are the home one and the Yoda unit, we can't play those with U-Wing, which is also a big tier. So I don't like the card at all in the deck.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is like we already have so much late game, and we're not playing Data Vaults, so we don't have space for playing U-Wing. And one of the annoying thing about U-Wing is like U-Wing is gonna put at the bottom your 8 cost card. Like it's gonna look at them and he's gonna put the Yoda at the bottom of your deck. The Yodas and the Om one. So as much as it makes me sad because it's one of my favorite cards
already.
What?
Yeah, we have 5 7-cost cards already, and we don't have space for more 7-drops.
Yeah.
And those 5 are all better than a copy of U-Wing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Even though that makes me sad because it's one of my favorite cards, but...
Yeah, also one of mine. It's so fun. You can do so many things with this card, but it doesn't fit in the deck, sadly.
Okay, so moving on, we got also Bright Hope. I guess Bright Hope is kind of the similar answer as Concord Dawn Interceptor. Also, it doesn't really fit in the curve as well because we're trying to skip the turn 4. Any other reason why we're not playing Bright Hope?
Like, there's a reason between Bright Hope and Marauder, which is better, but because of the ramp, the Marauder does more, in my opinion. And immediately killing a 4 HP space unit, which are the most crucial point, is so important immediately that they can't put pilots on it. Like, if they put a pilot on it, we will just only slow them down 1 turn. And Yoda's not the deck which we want to slow them only down 1 turn because we don't have like a board wipe or something like that, like other control decks. So we can't allow them to just slow them down. We need to kill their units, otherwise we will get overran.
Yeah, I also think that Bright Hope is Bright Hope is so much better in a Ray deck because Ray can actually upgrade into a 3/7, which makes a big difference. And also Ray plays a lot of 1-drops, so the ability of Bright Hope to bounce a card back into your hand to draw a card is very strong. We don't have any of this in the Yoda deck, so it doesn't make as much sense to play Bright Hope as well. Yeah, so that brings us the conclusion of this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you want to ask more questions, obviously you can put your comments on the comments below, or you can also join the Discord where members of Teenage Ninja answer all the questions that players ask. And so if you got any other thoughts about this deck, I think this is going to be a powerful deck moving forward. I think it has proven, Tim has proven that this deck was capable of doing great things. He was undefeated in Swiss, and then went all the way up to the final. That was just complete domination. And I have to say, he did not encounter any bad, mostly not bad matchup. Of course, that does help. I feel like if we are talking about a little bit about the matchup, so let's talk about a little bit about the matchup before we close the video. So my thoughts are that generally speaking, though this deck is really great against any mid-range deck, it suffers a little bit against hard control, but we did make some changes to the deck that really fixed the problem. Against aggro, it's quite weak overall because we play 20 HP base and we have a late deploy leader. But I feel like the deck does pretty decent against Sabine. I think the Sabine matchup is pretty much 50-50 because we have so many sentinels and so much heal. So we do a great job, and the space aggro is really going to be our major weakness, but we do have a lot of sideboard card against this. Do you agree, generally speaking, with my assessment on the matchups, or is there an initial thought that you have on this?
Yeah, that's exactly what I think. Like, we didn't want to have like a Palpatine thing where we have just unwinnable matchups basically. So we tried to put as much sideboard, like the most sideboard cards are for space aggro, to don't have like an auto loss to space aggro, still do something against it, which is important. I don't like decks where you have auto losses. So I think you can win against any deck in the game currently with this deck. And because you have such a great matchups and most of the players play mid range. Like you have against most of the decks at a tournament, you have such a good matchup, which is great. So that's why Yoda is such an amazing deck in this color combination.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining me into talking about this deck. That was the first time I was doing a deck tech with someone else. So it was great, and maybe I'll do it another time. Let me know in the comments below if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. See you.
Yeah, sure. I had a lot of fun with you making the deck tech. And if you guys have any questions, I will be also around in the comments. And if you want to maybe see some gameplay to the deck, the PQ last weekend I played was streamed on Holocron Carta. That's the channel. So I was in the first round and at the last two rounds on stream. So if you want to see some gameplay, you can check that out as well.
Yeah, we'll put the holocron on the description. See you, everybody,
Okay, perfect.
and see you next time.